Hi, welcome to Prime Recap. A genetically modified dog is rescued from a laboratory where he was used as a guinea pig. Now he is loose on the streets, ready to eliminate all those who dare cross his path. Today we will recap the story of the 1993 movie, Man's Best Friend. A scientist named Judy Sanders makes a phone call to journalist Lori Tanner. The woman promises to get Lori into the lab that night. The journalist suspected that building was used to do research on animals and wanted to go there to expose all this cruelty. After the call, Judy walks to a room where dozens of animals were kept locked in cages. At that moment, she realizes that one of the cages was empty. While checking to see what might have happened, the woman is brutally attacked by a mysterious creature. Suddenly, a man appears and hits the animal with a tranquilizer dart. However, it was too late and the woman could not survive the attack. That evening, as arranged, Lori has her car parked outside the building, along with her assistant, Annie, waiting for Judy. They had agreed to meet at 8:30. However, it was already 9 o'clock and the scientist didn't show up. Then Lori and Annie decide to go in on their own. They spot the garbage truck standing in the doorway, and when they get closer they smell a terrible odor coming from one of the containers. Upon opening the lid, the journalist finds blood and animal guts. Annie takes the opportunity to do her first shots. They then actually enter the building and soon find the room where the animals were kept caged. Those animals were visibly being mistreated. Most were severely injured and some had parts of their bodies cut off. In fact, one of the monkeys trapped in the lab had his brain completely exposed and there were several wires coming out of his head. At that moment, Lori could confirm her suspicions and, more than ever, she wanted to put an end to that organization. In the next room, the journalist discovers that even wild and endangered animals were being used in those experiments. While the women were investigating the site, Dr. Jarrett, the scientist responsible for leading that research, arrived at the building with new specimens that he intended to use in his studies. Still in the laboratory, Lori is in for a big surprise. Among those dozens of wild animals, she finds a dog, apparently very docile. In the cage, there is a little tag indicating that the dog's name is Max. Lori opens the cage and hugs the dog. She intends to record the opening of her next article right there. Meanwhile, the building security guard arrives in the room bringing 2 new species that would be used as study material. The dog hears a noise coming from the laboratory next door and runs into it. Lori and Annie go after him and end up being discovered. Max knocks over some barrels containing chemical reagents on top of the security guard, while the women try to escape. During the escape, Annie drops Lori's notebook on the floor, but since she was too preoccupied with escaping, she doesn't even notice this slip. The elevator door opens and Jarrett ends up bumping into the journalists. The man is panicked to find Max outside his cell and tries to get him to come back in. However, the dog knows what his fate will be if he follows the doctor's orders. So he decides to run away. Jarrett goes after him, but can't catch up. Lori and Annie arrive at the car, and Max comes running out and gets into the vehicle. That way, he gets direct transport out of the gates of that hell. Not knowing where to find the dog, Jarrett decides to go to the police. The man tells the cops that Max is a research animal worth $1 million, and therefore he needs to get him back. Before returning home, the journalists decide to go shopping in a supermarket. They are returning to the car while talking about what they are going to do with Max. Lori was considering taking the dog home with her, when she is surprised by a robber armed with a knife. Seeing Lori being attacked, Max jumps out of the car and runs after the criminal. As the woman picks up her groceries from the floor, the dog returns with the bag the man had taken. In that instant, she decides that Max will become the newest member of her family. When she gets home, Lori takes the opportunity to do some more footage. She finds a huge scar on the animal's belly, and inside its ear was a marking with his identification code. There is no doubt that lab treated animals as objects, and Max was just one of hundreds of victims of that place. But Lori promises that from that moment on she will protect him and no one else can hurt him. A few hours later, Perry, Lori's boyfriend, arrives home. The man is welcomed by Max, who does not like his presence at all. Lori tries to explain herself and tells that dog saved her from an attack she suffered while leaving the supermarket. Still, Perry does not agree with the idea of adopting a dog that size. However, after a short discussion, the man eventually gives in and agrees to keep Max, provided that the dog lives in the backyard of the house. Little does he know the problems that this decision will cause him to face. During the night, Max starts barking wildly and Lori goes over to see what is going on. When she opens the door, the dog enters the house and she allows him to sleep in the living room, at least for that night. The woman returns to her room and a few minutes later Max goes after her. The dog looks through the lock on the door and sees Lori and Perry together inside. Immediately he starts barking, and when Lori opens the door, the dog becomes enraged and tries to attack Perry. The next morning, Jarrett returns to the police station in order to receive updates about the search for Max. The scientist says that the dog is under the effect of a tranquilizing substance, and when this effect wears off, the animal will lose control and become totally violent. When he realizes that the policemen are not committed to finding his dog, the doctor decides to start investigations on his own. Meanwhile, Max is in the backyard of Laurie's house trying to keep himself behaved, but the poor dog doesn't have a peaceful day. A boy was cycling through the neighborhood delivering newspapers and ended up hitting the head of the animal. Despite being extremely intelligent, Max is no ordinary dog, so he has never been trained to catch objects in the air. The result of this is that he becomes extremely angry with the boy. Max jumps over the wooden gate and runs after him. The boy is frightened and falls off his bicycle. The dog is ready to tear him in half, but luckily for the kid, Laurie calls the dog to eat and Max gives up his attack. A few minutes later, Rudy, Laurie's neighbor, shows up. The boy is happy to meet Max and asks to go for a walk with him. On the way, Max meets Reedy, Rudy's dog. He even tries to socialize, but Reedy pays no attention. Then Max and Rudy continue their tour in the neighborhood. At the police station, the officers receive a phone call from a guy named Bill Sanders. He is Judy's husband and has contacted them to report his wife missing. Judy had not returned home the night before. Vendetti also says that the woman works in the Emacs laboratory, the one run by Dr. Jarrett. They then decide to pay the scientist a visit in order to find out what has happened to Judy. Upon questioning, the man says that she had only been working in that lab for 3 months and he barely knew her. Jarrett takes advantage of the visit to take the policeman to his research room. There, he explains that Max is the result of a genetic crossbreeding, which includes different animals with the most diverse abilities. Max has all 5 of his senses enhanced, plus much greater strength and speed than any other dog. In addition, he possesses the ability to climb like a jaguar and the ability to camouflage himself like a chameleon if he feels threatened. While out for a walk with Max, Judy finds her friend riding his bike through the neighborhood. Soon after, they come across one of the neighbor's cats. Max barks angrily and the animal is very frightened. Upon seeing this scene, the kids decide to let the dog out. The cat escapes and climbs a tree. What no one expected was that Max would also be able to climb. The dog's nails start growing and he climbs to the top of the tree. The poor cat was trapped and had nowhere else to escape. Max then devours it alive, swallowing the animal whole, as if it were a snake. The boys, after seeing all this terror, run away scared. Max returns home to find Perry and Laurie together. The animal is determined to get rid of that guy. On his way to work, Perry comes to a point on the road where the road is blocked off. He steps on the brake to stop the car, but the pedal is not working. His last option is to use the handbrake. His car narrowly misses crashing into a truck that was stopped in the middle of the road. A while later, Laurie also leaves home and asks Max to look after the property while she is away. However, as soon as the woman leaves for work, Max jumps out the gate and goes to pay Rudy a visit. The dog waits until Rudy and his father leave the house and comes in through the window. Rudy runs away and hides in the bedroom, but Max manages to find her. Perry takes his car to the mechanic to find out what happened to the brakes and the man says that the cable had been bitten off. When he looks at the marks, Perry realizes that this damage had been done by Max and soon comes to the conclusion that the dog was trying to kill him. Since Laurie had not yet returned home, Max decides to take a walk around the neighborhood and takes the opportunity to relieve himself at a hydrant. Then it is possible to see that Max's urine was so acidic that it was corroding the metal. On the other side of town, a body was found. The police arrive on the scene and identify that this is the guy who committed robberies in the neighborhood. However, he went wrong the day he decided to approach Laurie. Apparently, Max's attack was enough to kill him. Jarrett is called to the scene and confirms that, from the bite marks, Max was indeed the one who eliminated him. Vendetti then directs the police officers to search for the dog and capture it dead or alive. An unlucky mailman walks through the neighborhood delivering mail and has just left Laurie's house. However, Max was already at the gate waiting for him. The man feels threatened and uses pepper spray against the dog, but it is obvious that Max would not let this go easily. The man tries to jump over the gate, but the animal grabs him by the leg and manages to knock him down. At Emacs, an assistant finds the notebook Annie dropped the day she broke into the lab. She hands the notebook to Jarrett and the scientist goes to the agency where the woman works. Upon arriving there, the secretary informs Laurie that Jarrett wanted to see her. But Laurie says she will not be able to attend to him at that time. The woman gets her things and runs home. Her biggest fear is that Max will be taken back to that laboratory. However, Perry arrives home before she does and prepares to eliminate Max. To do so, the man intends to poison him. At this time, the dog is in the basement burying the body of the mailman he had attacked. Perry prepares a juicy plate of meat for Max, who soon shows up to eat. But the animal smells the poison in the food and attacks the man. Perry manages to escape and runs off with his car, but the tranquilizer substance is already losing its effect on Max's body and the dog is enraged. As Perry manages to escape his attack, Laurie's parrot becomes the new target. The dog jumps into the cage and devours the animal. Soon after, Laurie arrives home and puts Max in the car. She intends to take the dog to a safe place, where that crazy scientist could not find him. But Jarrett hasn't given up on going after Laurie yet. He throws a tranquilizer dart at the security guard at the building where the woman works and sneaks to her office. There he finds the footage taken the night his lab was raided. Minutes later, Annie enters the room and is surprised by the doctor. Laurie and Max arrive at a junkyard. The owner of the place says he has a ranch in a neighboring town and will take the dog to live there. Heartbroken, the woman leaves. She says that if the situation changes and Max is no longer in danger, she would come back for him. The dog tries to go after her, but the man attaches the lead to a hook and lands a blow on the animal's head. When he wakes up, he sees the mechanic working beside him and he had a solder in his hands. Max becomes enraged and the man threatens to burn him. The dog makes so much force that he ends up breaking the chain that was holding him. When he gets loose, he jumps on top of the man, who fights back by burning his face. Even wounded and with one eye blinded, Max doesn't give up until he kills him. Meanwhile, the police already have a warrant in hand and search the Emacs building. The cops suspect that Max was responsible for killing Judy, one of the lab employees, and Jarrett is covering up the case. On the way home, Laurie tells Perry that she had to leave Max with someone else. Later, when she arrives home, she is surprised to find a puppy that Perry had bought. The man says he felt bad about what happened to Max and decided to take Spike home with him. By this time, however, Max has escaped from the junkyard and managed to return to Laurie's house. He spots Perry and decides to complete his revenge. The dog follows him to the second floor of the house. Upon seeing the animal, the man tries to hide inside the closet, but Max goes through the door and manages to knock him out. He then urinates acid on the man's face. Laurie is downstairs together with Rudy. They hear the noise and go to the stairs to see what is going on. Just then, they spot Max. Laurie almost doesn't recognize him. The animal is all bruised and totally out of control. Rudy grabs the baseball bat to defend himself, but the dog holds the bat with his mouth and throws the boy away. At that moment, the police appear and Max runs away. The cars give chase, but the animal is faster and manages to lose them. Two men are driving the animal control truck when they spot the dog running through the streets and decide to go after him. They follow Max to a garage. Once there, the dog hides, and when the men enter to look for him, the garage gate closes. Max uses his super skill of camouflage and leaves the guys terrified when, out of nowhere, he reappears. Overcome with despair, the men get into the truck and drive away from the place. At Laurie's house, everything seemed to be falling apart. Perry was taken to the hospital with serious burns on his face. Detective Kovac asks the woman not to leave the house until Max is captured. While surveilling the house that night, the detective finds the body of the letter carrier that the monstrous dog had killed. Just then, Max appears and attacks Kovac. Laurie hears a noise and runs out with Spike in her arms until she reaches the car. When she opens the car door, she finds Officer Bendetti dead, with a bite on his neck. Suddenly, Jarrett appears, pushes the woman into the car, and drives on his way to the Emacs building. Max runs after them and jumps on the windshield. He attacks the scientist, who ends up losing control of the car, causing a serious accident. The vehicle overturns, but everyone is still alive. Laurie is the first to make it out of the wreckage, and then rescues Spike. Soon after, Max appears. The animal is raging and tries to attack the woman, but she enters the building and hides in one of the rooms. During the escape, she gets distracted and knocks over one of the devices in the lab. Spike runs scared and looks for a place to hide. Laurie goes up the stairs and into another room. The woman puts a machine in front of the door to try to contain the angry animal, but him still manages to get in. Laurie takes a scalpel to defend herself and tries to protect herself by entering one of the cages. However, she realizes that Max is being violent like that because he is feeling threatened. So Laurie puts the gun down and allows the dog to approach. In doing so, Max returns to being that docile and affectionate animal with whom she had fallen in love. Just then, Jarrett appears with a shotgun and orders the woman to step away from the dog. He prepares to shoot, but Max jumps on top of the man and knocks him to the floor below. The scientist ends up dying by electrocution, but while being attacked, he shoots Max, who also meets a sad end. 3 months later, Laurie is walking with Spike and Rudy invites her to his house. The boy shows her that Rudy had puppies and one of them was identical to Max. So, what did you think of this movie? Let us know in the comments below. And if you liked the video, like it and subscribe for more movie recaps. See you next time.